Jake Morrison walked into the big meeting room where all the alien leaders sat in their fancy chairs. He had been Earth's voice in this place for 3 years now. 3 long years of watching good people die while these aliens talked and talked about what they should do. Today was different, though. Today he was going to say something that would change everything. The room was shaped like a big bowl with seats going up the sides. 12 different alien races had their spots here. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals that caught the light. The Metharians needed special suits to breathe. The Boreans had too many arms and made clicking sounds when they talked. Jake had learned to work with all of them, but he never learned to like how slow they were when people needed help. Speaker Vexithara was the boss of this whole council. She was tall and made of what looked like blue crystal. When she moved her forearms, everyone was supposed to listen. She did that now and the room got quiet. Ambassador Morrison, you called this meeting. Tell us why we are here. Jake pressed a button and pictures appeared in the air above them. Charts and numbers showed how many ships each race had and where they sent them. It showed which planets had problems and which ones got help. The numbers told a story that Jake was tired of seeing. 3 months ago, the colony called New Eden sent out emergency calls for help. Space pirates had surrounded their planet and stopped all supply ships from getting through. Families had no food. Children were getting sick and dying. Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces. Some looked away from him. Others seemed bored, like this was just another meeting. Ambassador Glixon from Metheria spoke up from inside his breathing suit. The council voted on this situation. We decided that military action would cost too much money. Too much money. Jake said those words slowly so everyone could hear how angry he was getting. 47 human ships went to help those people while you all sat here counting coins. We broke through the pirate blockade ourselves and saved thousands of lives. The Borean delegate clicked his mouth parts in a way that meant he was not happy. Humans always act before they think. This is why you need our guidance. Captain Lisa Grant stepped up next to Jake. She was his helper and had been writing down everything that happened in these meetings for months. Her green eyes were sharp and she missed nothing. She handed Jake a data pad with more information on it. Last week, the mining stations in the Kepler sector called for help. Pirates were attacking them over and over. Again, we asked the council for support. Again, you told us to wait while you studied the problem. The pictures in the air changed to show broken space stations and rescue ships. Human vessels were pulling people out of wrecked buildings while alien ships stayed far away where it was safe. And yesterday, when a deadly sickness hit the refugee camps on Sanctuary Prime, it was not council medical ships that showed up first. It was Dr. Helen Barnes and her team of volunteers. They risked getting sick themselves to save lives that apparently did not matter enough for official help. Speaker Vexthara's crystal body got darker. Ambassador Morrison, the council works by agreement. Quick decisions lead to bigger problems later. No, Jake said in a voice that carried across the whole room. Quick decisions save lives. What you call agreement, we call being afraid to act. All the aliens started talking at once. They were upset that a human would dare to speak to them this way. But Jake raised his hand and somehow they got quiet again. Starting right now, humanity is leaving the Galactic Council. The words hit the room like a bomb going off. Everyone started shouting in their different languages. Translators were working overtime to keep up with all the angry voices. But Jake was not done talking. We will keep our trade deals with anyone who wants them. We will still talk to each of your governments when you want to talk to us. But we will not pretend anymore that this council cares about protecting innocent people the way we do. Jake turned around and started walking toward the door. Lisa followed right behind him. They did not yell or make threats or demand anything. They just left. The alien leaders were still arguing with each other when the 2 humans disappeared from sight. Out in the hallway, Jake and Lisa walked quickly toward their ship. Other humans who worked at the council station saw them leaving and fell into step behind them. Word spread fast that something big was happening. By the time they reached the docking bay, 23 humans were walking together as a group. Sir, Lisa said as they boarded their ship. The aliens are sending messages asking us to come back and explain what we mean. Jake sat down in the captain's chair and looked out at the council station through the front window. It was a huge thing built by all 12 races working together. It had taken them 15 years to build and was supposed to represent unity and cooperation. To Jake, it looked like a monument to talking too much and doing too little. Tell them we said everything we needed to say in there. We are going home. The human ship pulled away from the station and headed toward Earth. Behind them, alarms were going. Office Council security tried to figure, out what to do about the first member race to ever just walk away. In the meeting room, the aliens were still shouting at each other, trying to decide who was to blame and what they should do next. But Jake Morrison was not thinking about any of that anymore. He was thinking about the distress call that had come in that morning from a frontier world under attack. The council would spend weeks debating whether to help. The humans would be there by tomorrow. As Earth got bigger in their view screen, Jake smiled for the first time in months. Sometimes the best thing you can do is stop talking and start walking. Sometimes leaving is the only way to make your point clear. The council would understand soon enough what humanity had taken with them when they left. They had taken the idea that some things matter more than following rules and procedures. They had taken the courage to act when action was needed most. 3 weeks after the humans walked out of the council meeting, Trade Commissioner Nalvek sat in his office staring at numbers that made no sense. The Aquarian had been tracking trade flows for 15 years and had never seen anything like this. Human ships that used to carry goods through council space had simply vanished overnight. Not destroyed or captured, but gone to somewhere else entirely. Nalvex had gills on the sides of his neck that fluttered when he was worried. They were fluttering a lot these days. His assistant Feldor came into the office carrying more bad news written on data sheets. Sir, the mining companies in Kepler Sector are asking for emergency help again. Without human patrol ships, the pirates came back and they are hitting the stations harder than before. Nalvex rubbed his gills with his webbed fingers. What about the Borean fleet? Councillor Thorak was very loud about how humans acted too fast without thinking. The Boreans say they do not have enough money to send ships, sir. They want to form another committee to study the costs. Before Nalvex could answer, his communication system started beeping with an incoming message. The sender was Dr. Kate Phillips, who used to work with the council on medical emergencies. Her message was short and polite, but it hit Nalvex like a punch in the stomach. Commissioner Nalvex, I hope you are doing well. I wanted to let you know that our medical group will now work directly with planets that ask for our help. We have no anger toward the council and we hope you do well in the future. Dr. Phillips. The message came with a list of 73 worlds that had already signed deals with the human doctors. All of them were places that used to get help through the council. Now they were getting better help faster by talking to humans directly. That night, Nalvex went to an emergency meeting called by Speaker Vexithera. The big council chamber felt empty and cold without the humans sitting in their front row seats. The empty chairs seemed to stare at everyone like missing teeth in a smile. Fellow delegates. Speaker Vexithara began, but her crystal voice did not sound as strong as usual. We must talk about the problems that started when the humans left. Councillor Thorak stood up fast. His many arms waved as he talked. The humans think they can make us do what they want by leaving. We should show them that the council is stronger without their wild behavior. But Ambassador Glixen shook his head inside his breathing suit. Councillor, 17 worlds in my area have asked for human protection services. They are not asking the council for help anymore. Same thing is happening where I come from, said Delegate Quintal from the Helix Group. Human trading ships are offering better deals than our approved trade networks. Speaker Vexithera tried to make everyone stop arguing, but the debates went on for hours. What became clear was that humanity had not needed to threaten anyone or make demands. They had just left, and when they left, they took something with them that the council was only now starting to understand. The next morning, Nalvex got a report that made his gills stop fluttering entirely. The report said that human rescue ships had saved 3,000 Zephyrian refugees, whose transport ship had broken down in deep space. The rescue had taken 6 hours from distress call to completed evacuation. The council still had not finished forming a committee to discuss whether they should help. By the end of the week, similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships working with other races to stop pirate attacks. Human doctors treating plague outbreaks on worlds the council had not even heard about yet. Human engineers fixing broken space stations while council inspectors were still filling out paperwork to visit them. What bothered Nalvex most was how happy everyone seemed to be working with humans directly. The Helix Syndicate had announced they were forming a defense partnership with Earth. The Tau Ceti colonies were sharing their mining technology with human engineers. Even some of the smaller Zephyrian crystal worlds were talking about leaving the council to join whatever new group the humans were building. Nalvex called his old friend Dextar from the Altarian Empire. They had worked together for many years, and Dextar always gave good advice. The humans are making us look bad without even trying, Nalvex said over the video call. Dextar nodded slowly. His people looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. They are not trying to make us look bad, my friend. They are just doing what they think is right. The problem is that what they think is right works better than what we think is right. But surely proper procedures prevent bigger disasters. We have systems for a reason. Do we? Dextar asked. Tell me how many beings died in the New Eden blockade while we debated sending help. Tell me how many suffered in the Kepler raids while we studied committee reports. Nalvex looked up the numbers on his computer. He wished he had not. 7,412 died at New Eden. 2,800 died in the Kepler raids. Nearly 10,000 people died while we followed proper procedures, Dextar said quietly. In both cases, human ships arrived and saved lives while we were still talking about whether we should help. That night, Nalvex could not sleep. He kept thinking about those numbers. 10,000 people who might still be alive if the Council had acted like humans instead of like the Council. He got up and went to his office window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were probably responding to another emergency call while the Council slept and dreamed of committees. The next day brought news that 3 more races had announced they were reducing their participation in Council activities. They were not leaving entirely like the humans had, but they were spending more time working on direct partnerships with other worlds. The Council was becoming less important every day, and everyone could see it happening. Nalvex realized that when the humans left, they had taken more than just their ships and their trade routes. They had taken the example of what it looked like when someone actually cared more about helping people than about following rules. Now everyone could see the difference between the two approaches, and they were choosing the one that worked. The Council had spent so long being proud of their careful procedures that they had forgotten the point of having procedures in the first place. The point was supposed to be helping people and making the galaxy a better place. Somehow they had lost sight of that goal and started thinking that following procedures was the goal itself. As Nalvex watched another human merchant ship dock at the Council station to deliver medical supplies, he finally understood what they had lost. They had lost the courage to do what was right instead of what was safe. Admiral Pete Collins stood on the bridge of his flagship, the EFS Liberty, watching his fleet move through space toward another emergency call. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and Pete found himself commanding something that had never existed before. A purely human naval force that operated in what used to be Council, protected space but was now becoming something entirely different. Pete had gray hair and tired eyes from 30 years of military service. He had fought pirates and rescued civilians and kept trade routes safe under Council authority for most of his career. Now he was doing the same job but without having to ask permission from committees that met once a month and took 3 months to make decisions. Admiral, we have 17 ships ready for rescue operations, reported Lieutenant Commander Mary Foster from her position at the tactical station. The Zephyrian colony ship has engine failure and is losing air. 10,000 refugees are on board and we can save them all if we move fast. Pete nodded and looked at the main screen showing the massive alien vessel drifting helpless in space. Crystalline beings inside were probably terrified as their ship slowly died around them. 6 months ago, this rescue would have required forms and approvals and risk assessments. Today, it just required ships and people willing to help. Execute rescue plan, Mary. Make sure our friends from the Tau Ceti Alliance coordinate with us. The Tau Ceti Alliance was one of 7 new groups that had formed after humanity left the Council. Instead of the old system where everything had to go through official channels, these new alliances were built on simple agreements between races that actually wanted to help each other. No bureaucracy, no endless meetings, just cooperation based on shared values. As human rescue, ships started pulling Zephyrian refugees to safety. Pete received a priority message from Earth. President Ellen Hayes appeared on his communication screen looking serious but determined like she always did when important things were happening. Admiral Collins, I have news from the diplomatic side. The Aquarian Federation has officially asked for bilateral defense agreements. That makes 9 major species who have approached us directly since we left the Council. Pete smiled, but not in a happy way. What about the Council itself, Madam President? Still debating whether to send us a formal inquiry about our intentions. Speaker Vexthara has called 3 separate committee meetings just to discuss how to ask us what we plan to do. On the main screen, Pete could see the last group of Zephyrian refugees being moved to safety aboard human medical ships. What struck him most was how the rescue included vessels from 4 different species all working together through direct communication, instead of the layers of bureaucracy that had made Council operations so slow and clumsy. The Kepler situation has been resolved, Pete reported to President Hayes. Our partnership with the Helix Syndicate. Security forces eliminated the pirate threat in 12 hours. No committees, no extended debates, no dead civilians. President Hayes nodded approvingly. That matches what I am hearing from all sectors, Admiral. When people can act on their values instead of political calculations, problems actually get solved. After the communication ended, Pete walked to the observation deck where he found Dr. Angela Martinez. She was the fleet's chief medical officer and was watching the rescued Zephyrians being treated in the medical bays. Their crystal bodies were glowing brighter now that they were safe and breathing clean air again. You know what is interesting, Admiral? Dr. Martinez said, without turning away from the viewport. Back when we were part of the Council, every rescue operation required 16 different approvals from 8 different committees. Now we just help people, and somehow, Pete replied, we are helping more people than we ever did before. Through the thick, transparent material, they could see the rescued Zephyrian colony ship being pulled to safety by human towing vessels. Escort ships from 3 allied species maintained protective formations around the entire group. It was a sight that would have been impossible under the old Council system, where such cooperation would have needed months of negotiation and political maneuvering between bureaucrats who had never seen a space battle or a dying refugee. What Pete and Dr. Martinez did not know was that their rescue operation was being watched from far away by Council intelligence ships. Those ships were sending reports back to headquarters that were making the remaining Council members very nervous about their future. The intelligence reports painted a picture of efficiency and cooperation that the Council had never achieved. Human-led coalitions were responding to emergencies in hours instead of weeks. Trade disputes that would have taken the Council months to resolve were being settled through direct negotiation between affected parties in days or sometimes hours. Pirate attacks that the Council had been unable to stop for years were being eliminated by coordinated strikes from multiple species, working under human coordination. Most disturbing to the Council was how happy everyone seemed to be with the new arrangements. Worlds that had complained for years about slow Council responses were now praising the speed and effectiveness of human-led interventions. Trading partners who had been frustrated by Council bureaucracy were signing direct agreements with Earth and its allies that cut processing time from months to days. The intelligence reports also noted something else that worried Council leadership. The human-led alliances were growing. What had started as bilateral agreements between Earth and individual species had evolved into multilateral partnerships that included dozens of worlds. These new alliances were not trying to replace the Council, but they were making the Council irrelevant by simply doing a better job. Pete received another message as his fleet finished securing the rescued Zephyrians. This time it was from Admiral Sarah Kane, who commanded human forces in the Outer Rim territories. Pete, we have a situation developing in the frontier zone. Long-range sensors show a major pirate fleet massing near the asteroid fields. Looks like they are planning something big. How big? Pete asked. Big enough that they could hit a dozen civilian targets before anyone could stop them. The old Council response time to that region was 3 weeks minimum. What about our new partners? The Helix Syndicate has fast attack ships that can be there in 2 days. The Aquarians have heavy cruisers that can be there in 3 days. If we coordinate properly, we can have them surrounded before they know what hit them. Pete looked out at the stars where somewhere pirates were planning to attack innocent people and somewhere else human ships and their allies were preparing to stop them. No committees would debate whether the threat was real enough to justify action. No bureaucrats would worry about proper procedures for engaging hostile forces. The pirates would be stopped because stopping them was the right thing to do and because the people who could stop them were willing to act. As the Liberty and its escort fleet set course for the frontier zone, Pete realized that humanity had not just left the Council. They had shown the galaxy what was possible when good people were free to do good things without asking permission first. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, an emergency meeting was taking place that had never happened before in the institution's 200-year history. For the first time ever, the council was meeting not to deal with an outside threat, but to examine whether the council itself could survive much longer. Speaker. Vexithera stood before rows of seats that were more empty than full. In the 10 months since humanity walked out, 3 more species had formally left the council, and 7 others had reduced their participation to the bare minimum required by their old treaties. The Helix Syndicate had announced. That morning they were joining the growing Tau Ceti alliance, which was another blow to what remained of council unity. Delegates. Speaker. Vexithera began, and her crystal voice carried a note of uncertainty that had never been there before. We gather today to address the crisis that has befallen our institution. Trade Commissioner Nalvex took the floor first, and his report was devastating in its cold precision. Fellow councilors, I must report that trade volume through official council channels has decreased by 68%. Response times to humanitarian crises have increased by an average of 312%. Military effectiveness ratings have dropped to levels not seen since before the council was formed. Councillor Thrak clicked his mandibles loudly in agitation. These are temporary problems. The species that left will realize they need proper governance and they will come back. But Ambassador Glixon from Matheria stood up to disagree with him. Councillor Thrak, I must respectfully say you are wrong. My government has received reports from our border territories, where human-led coalitions operate. Piracy has decreased by 92%. Disease outbreaks are contained within days rather than months. Trade disputes are resolved through direct arbitration rather than endless committee reviews. They are showing results we have not achieved in decades, added Delegate Quintal, in a quiet voice that somehow made the words more damning. The chamber fell completely, silent as the implications of those words settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. Finally, a new voice spoke up. Ambassador Dextar from the Altarian Empire was one of the council's founding members and had been there since the beginning. When he asked for permission to speak, everyone listened. Perhaps, Dextar said slowly, like he was thinking through each word carefully, we should examine what we lost when humanity departed. Not their ships or their trade routes, but their approach to making decisions. Speaker Vexithara's crystal form grew dimmer. What do you mean, Ambassador? I have been studying human decision-making processes. Dextar continued. When faced with a crisis, they do not form committees or debate jurisdictions. They identify the problem, pool their resources, and take action. When the action proves effective, they continue it. When it fails, they adapt quickly and try something else. That is primitive, Thrak objected. Proper civilization requires deliberation and careful thought. Does it? Dextar challenged him directly. Tell me, Counselor, how many beings died in the New Eden blockade while we deliberated? How many suffered in the Kepler raids while we studied committee reports? How many children died from preventable diseases on Sanctuary Prime while we debated medical protocols? The questions hung in the air like accusations that no one wanted to answer. Commissioner Nalvex checked his datapad and announced the figures, in a quiet voice that somehow made them sound worse than if he had shouted them. 7,004. 112 casualties at New Eden. 2008. 100 casualties in the Kepler raids. 1,643 deaths on Sanctuary Prime from diseases we knew how to cure. Over 11,000 beings. Dextar continued with relentless logic. Died while we followed proper procedures. In every single case, human intervention saved lives that our deliberation had cost. For the first time in council history, not a single delegate attempted to argue with those numbers or justify why the deaths had been necessary for the greater good. Speaker Vexithera finally broke the uncomfortable silence. What are you suggesting, Ambassador Dextar? I am suggesting we finally understand what humanity took away when they left us. Dextar replied with conviction. They took away the idea that saving lives is more important than following procedures. They took away the belief that moral clarity matters more than political consensus. They took away the courage to act when action is needed most. The chamber remained silent as delegates absorbed this revelation. Outside the council station, ships were moving through space with purpose and efficiency that the council had never achieved. A human merchant vessel was docking at the commercial port carrying medical supplies for a Zephyrian colony that the council had classified as outside their immediate area of responsibility. Delegate Quintal raised a tentative hand. If humanity took away the courage to act, Then what does that say about us who are left behind? The question was brutal in its simplicity. What did it say about a governing body that could only see its own failures clearly after someone else had shown them a better way by leaving? It says, Dextar answered slowly, that we became so focused on avoiding mistakes that we forgot the biggest mistake of all is failing to help when help is needed. Ambassador Glixen shifted uncomfortably in his environmental suit. But surely there must be a balance between quick action and careful consideration. Some problems require extensive analysis. Which problems? Dextar asked. Which problems require extensive analysis while people die waiting for our decision? Name one situation where our careful deliberation produced a better outcome than immediate humanitarian action would have. The silence stretched on because everyone in the chamber knew there was no good answer to that question. Every major crisis of the past decade had been resolved more effectively by whoever acted first, rather than by whoever planned most carefully. Trade Commissioner Nalvex cleared his throat nervously. The intelligence reports indicate that human-led alliances now control or influence over 40% of galactic commerce and 60% of emergency response capability. They have become the de facto authority in most frontier regions. Without trying to, Dextar pointed out, they did not set out to replace us. They simply started doing what they thought was right, and others chose to follow their example rather than our procedures. Speaker Vexithara looked around the half-empty chamber at the faces of delegates who had spent years perfecting the art of avoiding difficult decisions. So what do we do now? We admit, Dextar said with finality, that we lost something precious when humanity left, and we need to decide whether we want to try to get it back or whether we want to continue being irrelevant. As the meeting ended, delegates filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. For the first time in months, they were not debating procedures or jurisdictions. They were asking themselves whether they had the courage to change into something that could actually help people instead of just talking about helping people. Outside their window, the stars continued to shine on a galaxy where human ships and their allies were already working to make things better, one rescue at a time. 1 year after humanity quietly walked away from the Galactic Council, Captain Ryan Hughes received an unexpected message while his ship patrolled the space that used to be called the Neutral Zone. The message came from Speaker Vexithara herself, asking for a private meeting at the old diplomatic station near the Centauri crossing. Ryan had been expecting this moment for months. Intelligence reports suggested that the Council was facing the worst crisis in its 200-year history. 7 species had now formally withdrawn, and the remaining members were openly questioning whether their institution could survive much longer in its current form. The meeting took place in a small conference room that had once been used for minor trade negotiations between junior diplomats. Speaker Vexithara arrived alone, which was unusual since council leaders normally traveled with large entourages of advisors and security personnel. Her crystalline form seemed dimmer than Ryan remembered from the official ceremonies he had attended years ago as a junior officer. Captain Hughes, she began, and her voice lacked the commanding authority that had once made 12 different species listen when she spoke. I come to you not as speaker of the council, but as someone seeking to understand something important. Ryan leaned back in his chair and studied the alien leader who had once commanded the respect and obedience of millions of beings across dozens of star systems. Understand what exactly? What we lost when humanity left our council. What we apparently never truly possessed in the first place. For a moment, Ryan said nothing. Then he activated a holographic display that showed rescue operations, trade agreements, and defense partnerships between humanity and the species that had chosen to work with them directly, instead of through the council system. You want to know what you lost? Ryan asked. You lost the willingness to put principle before procedure. You lost the courage to make difficult decisions quickly when lives hang in the balance. But surely, Vexthera protested, careful deliberation prevents greater disasters from happening. Hasty action leads to consequences that no one can foresee. Ryan nodded in agreement. Sometimes it does. We have made mistakes. The mining dispute in the Vega system last month, for instance. We acted too quickly and misunderstood the cultural implications of our intervention. We had to backtrack and apologize. Then why not return to more careful methods that avoid such errors? Because, Ryan explained patiently, When we made that mistake, we acknowledged it immediately, compensated the affected parties for their losses, and established new protocols within days to prevent similar problems. When the Council makes mistakes, it forms committees to study the mistakes, then committees to review the committees, then committees to implement the recommendations of the reviewing committees. Ryan stood up and walked to the viewport where he could see ships from 6 different species moving through the space lanes in orderly formations. That would have been impossible under the old system. Human vessels worked alongside Helix Syndicate scouts, Aquarian medical ships, and Tau Ceti merchant convoys in a harmony born of mutual respect rather than bureaucratic mandate. "Look out there," Ryan continued. 6 months ago, those species barely communicated with each other, except through official council channels. Now they are coordinating rescue operations, sharing advanced technology, and resolving disputes through direct negotiation between the affected parties. Not because we forced them to cooperate, but because we showed them it was possible. Vexithara approached the viewport, and her crystalline form reflected the lights of the passing ships like a prism breaking starlight into component colors. "How do you maintain order without proper oversight and regulatory frameworks?" "We do not maintain order," Ryan replied. "We maintain trust. When the Helix Syndicate needed help upgrading their navigation systems, we provided it freely without asking for anything in return. When we needed defense support in the Outer Rim territories, they provided it without debate or committee review. When the plague hit the Tau Ceti colonies, Dr. Susan Clark was there within 18 hours of the first distress call. But what about accountability? What about preventing abuse of power by those in authority?" Ryan smiled at the question. "Every species in our alliance can leave at any time, just like we left the Council. That possibility keeps everyone honest and working for the common good. When your partners can walk away without penalty, you have to prove your value to them constantly." For several long minutes, Vexithara stood silent, processing this information. Her crystal form pulsed with different colors as she thought through the implications of what Ryan had told her. Finally, she spoke again. "The Council is dying, Captain Hughes. 3 more species announced their withdrawal this week. Those that remain spend more time debating procedural matters than addressing actual problems that need solutions. I know. Would humanity consider returning to the Council if we reformed our methods and procedures?" Ryan turned to face her directly, and his expression was serious but not unkind. "Speaker Vexithara, humanity did not leave because we wanted special treatment or because we were angry about specific decisions. We left because we realized we had become complicit in a system that prioritized process over people." He paused to choose his words carefully because what he said next would determine the future relationship between humanity and what remained of the galactic government. "If you want to rebuild the Council into something that can actually help people, instead of just talking about helping people, we would be willing to discuss it. But not as members trying to reform the system from within, as partners in creating something entirely new. What would that look like in practical terms? Direct action councils. Species that share fundamental values working together, without layers of bureaucracy slowing everything down. Clear, simple agreements that prioritize humanitarian aid, mutual defense, and free trade above political considerations. Most importantly, the understanding that sometimes you have to act first and negotiate the details later." As their meeting concluded, Ryan walked Vexithara to her transport ship. The corridor was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant sound of ships moving through the docking bays. "Speaker, can I ask you something? Personal?" "Of course, and when you realized the Council was failing, why did you not try to reform it from within instead of calling this meeting?" Vexithara's crystalline form pulsed with what Ryan had learned to recognize as embarrassment or shame. "Because I was afraid of making the wrong decision. I thought careful deliberation was the same thing as wisdom. And now I understand that refusing to decide is also a decision. And sometimes it is the worst decision you can possibly make." As Vexithara's transport departed, Ryan received a message from Admiral Collins. The Outer Rim pirates had launched a major offensive against refugee settlements, and human forces were already coordinating with 5 allied species for an immediate response to protect innocent civilians. No committees would meet to discuss whether the threat was real. No extended debates would determine proper jurisdiction. No procedural delays would slow down the response while people died waiting for help. Just the simple understanding that when people need help, you help them regardless of whether Helping them is officially your responsibility or not. 6 months later, the Galactic Council officially dissolved after a final vote of no confidence. In its place, 3 separate alliance networks emerged, each built on principles of direct action, mutual aid, and voluntary cooperation between species that shared common values. The largest of these networks called itself the Terran Alliance Coalition and included humanity along with 14 other species committed to rapid response humanitarian intervention wherever it was needed. The last entry in the official council records was a simple statement from former speaker Fexathara that read like an epitaph for a failed dream. We finally understand what humanity took away when they left us. They took away the courage to act on our values instead of hiding behind our procedures. History will judge whether we learned this lesson too late to matter. But across the galaxy, rescue ships bearing the flags of multiple species continued their vital work responding to distress calls with unprecedented speed and efficiency. And in the command centers of these operations, human voices could often be heard saying the same thing they had said when they quietly left the council chambers without drama or ultimatum. Lives first, politics later, always.